an incredible gift. We had no idea really what this should be, what it should turn into. It just had absolutely no parameters, and so different to the normal kind of tendering process or bid process or application process you normally have to go through for these things. The budget was reasonable, the time frame was reasonable, and we could sit down and say to a group of consumers with lived experience, okay, what does this mean to you? What are we actually doing here? And build it from the ground up. And my role on that project was basically to help them get on with it and let them do it. We were very, very lucky to have Tessa, who's going to present now with members of that group, not everybody, but some of the people from the group, and show you the resource. And it's entirely their work. It's entirely from the ground up, built for and by people with lived experience who are going to use this. So over time, it emerged into effectively a self-advocacy resource. So the idea is that you go online, it begins online, reflecting contemporary service and resource use, and fill it in, and then you take it to your doctor and say, here it is, here are the issues that I'm having with my physical and mental health, and here's how I want to address them. And it's a resource that steps you through each of those processes. So if that's something that you struggle with, then you can use this resource as a self-advocacy tool to plan and prepare and then reflect on that interaction and to do some offsetting of that power imbalance that is inherent in that doctor-patient relationship. So I will now hand over to Tessa and the rest of the team to formally introduce and showcase the resource. But thank you very much for joining us for this launch.
Thank you so much, Chris. So I'm joined by the co-design group. So maybe if you guys wave while I say your name. So I've got Amrita Dasvarma, Judith Drake, Mel Sharon, Lynn English, and Michael Birch. And we're not joined by Elsa Reyna and Heidi LaPaglia-Reid, who have been members for the full 2 years that it's been, that we've taken to develop this resource. And really, these guys did it. It's Chris and my names on the program, but it's these guys who told us what needed to happen. So without any more words from me, I'm going to hand over to Judith and Mel, who are going to do a little demonstration. And while they're doing that, each member who's here is going to share a reflection on a part of the process that they really liked or a part of the outcome that they feel really strongly about. So take it away.
Can I just check, is this thing on? Yeah. Cool. So I don't know if any of you guys, when you have to go and see a new doctor or a specialist or someone, get a bit anxious and a bit overwhelmed and can't quite think straight and you have a million things in your head that you want to mention and then you forget them. Not entirely dissimilar to standing up on a stage and talking about a project you've been working on. You kind of know your stuff, but in the moment, it's a bit hard to concentrate and think, and you talk too fast and you can't remember, and it's what was I going to say and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, that's where this resource is aiming to come in. So this is on the Equally Well website under resources.
It's hidden at the moment because it's a soft launch, but we will be having a more bells and whistles launch soon.
So how do we get rid of it?
You don't get much more bells and whistles than this.
We don't get much more bells and whistles than this.
Yeah. So the first page is sort of basically explaining what the resource is. And then if you click on About You, all of these sections are optional. So there's no required fields. So if something doesn't resonate with you, you just ignore it. And there is... Will you explain about the Word version, or did you want?
I thought you guys would do it, but I'll do it now. There's also on the first page, there's also an option to download this as a Word document that has each of the questions, because the co-design group felt quite strongly that people needed to be able to edit and update this as, if they thought that was right for them. So the online version has the advantage of being a bit more adaptable to people's individual questions that they wanted to have answered. The Word version has the advantage of being editable.
When you enter things on here, it doesn't actually save any of this. So at the end, there's the option to generate a PDF, which we'll show you, but it doesn't actually save any of your data, and that's for fairly obvious privacy reasons. It's incredibly difficult these days to store people's health data. So this is more of a way to arrange what you want to add, but we also recommend that if you're putting a lot of medical history and stuff, that you might cut and paste it as you go and just keep a backup. Okay. So, do you want to?
Yeah. So we thought we would very quickly just enter a few little bits of details in here, and basically show you sort of how it works, and hopefully it just starts to working. Yes, it does.
All right, so while they're doing that, Michael, do you want to share your reflection?
Yes, it is. Didn't want to jump in. I spent over 20 years in a mental health service as a patient advocate in Queensland, covering over 90,000 square kilometres. And one of the biggest complaints I always received, and there was hundreds, probably thousands, from people with lived experience and a lot of veterans that used to come in, which I had a passion for, was we don't get long enough with our psychiatrist, we don't get to see him often enough, and sometimes we don't get to see him at all. This resource is going to assist all of those people with getting adequately prepared for when they do see a doctor, to make the most of your time. That was the number one thing I used to spend most of my time doing, was getting people prepared. And a lot of people didn't like doing that. And this resource is going to be a great resource for that. And it's also going to help them remember what to say. So if they don't feel like having another person there with them, they've got it all written down, or the other person's got it all written down, and make sure they say everything. So this is going to help people with lived experience be in the driver's seat with their recovery, take control, be proactive, take responsibility, make more informed choices, because you've got all the things you want to say and you've thought about it, and they're in this document. Help yourself get and stay well, and improve your overall mental health and well-being.
So Judith and Mel, what are you doing now?
Well, basically, we're filling in a number of the pre-selected parts of this sheet, and one of the things that I've actually used this already and taken it to my GP and used it, because what I often find is I get so overwhelmed with the questions that I want to ask my GP. My GP is so focused in on my mental health that my GP is focused on my mental health that my physical health gets ignored. So taking this in with me and being able to go through that with him, it meant that we slowed down the time that we took and actually got into the physical health elements that were important. So what we're doing here is we're just simply going through some answers that Judith has done already, and she's answering this in here. And what this means is she can give it to her GP as like an agreement, or she can take it with her and have it as a prop. And I found that having it as a prop was very helpful. And I'd like to throw back to someone else who would like to tell us a bit more about their experience.
Thanks, Mel. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the co-design process and the group. All of us who were on the Consumer Resource Guide, the pulling it together, we all have a lived experience, but we are all very diverse with different worldviews. What united us was our passion about the project and its purpose, empowering those of us who deal with mental health issues and conditions to be able to advocate for ourselves in the health space. The co-design process was as successful as it was because, firstly, we were all committed to the project and creating the best resource we could. So we worked through our differences and sometimes conflicting opinions. And secondly, because Tessa, who was the project lead, administrator, adjudicator, counselor, all things, for all of us, showed us all respect and compassion throughout. And we worked together on this for 18 months, so that's quite a while. And I know I personally never felt any power imbalance between her and I, and it emphasized her commitment to co-design, which, as we all know, is quite difficult to achieve. But I think we actually came pretty close to perfecting it.
That was so nice. Judith, what are you up to now?
Okay, do you want me to go?
You go.
So now we're up to whether there are things that might make you feel unsafe when you go to the doctor. So it might be that you prefer to see a female clinician if possible, or something like that. And also things when you're unwell, what you want people to know, but also when you're well, what you want people to know. So when you're unwell, it might be who you want people to, who you want them to contact. You might want them to contact family and friends rather than a cat team, things like that. And when you're well, it might be that you want to have, preventative screening and get on top of some of that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Lynn, would you like to share a reflection?
Why shouldn't I? Excellent. It's a really good group of people. Tessa has been just the most wonderful lead, and there's a couple of other researchers on the group. Heidi's not here, she's not well, and also Ailsa Rayner. They're two people that come to mind that were regulars, and we met once a month, once every about that. And I think the thing for me was, when I was asked about what I wanted to reflect on, was, we talked about, is this necessary? Why do we need it? What are the important features of it? Obviously, ease of use and all of those things. And, the platform. And that's a difficult one because, I guess Equally Well doesn't have the resources to do it in the way that a lot of us would have liked to have had it done. But the content is how we want it. And I think one of the things is our conversations around the development of it and the stigma and, the difficulties people have with mental illness, trying to talk about their physical health and, over the top, all they see is, here comes my mood disorder or my BPD, whatever it is. It was the experiences of everybody and I guess their journey, their, life experiences with medical and mental health. That for me is always the most interesting. I love to learn. I might be getting old and grey, but I love to learn. I don't want to stop learning it. I'm still able and wanting to learn. And I'm passionate for a number of reasons, including my own now as I age. I thought the mind was getting better, but I can't say that. But the body's getting worse, I can guarantee you. So it was just, mixing with other people with like minds, all who wanted to make change and wanted to produce a resource that would have value. And we hope that it will have value for some. I think the other thing was all inputting about what was already available and was there something. This is probably a little bit different, even though there's a couple of organisations that produce similar things. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lynn and I had a bit of a back and forth about if she'd say anything, and I'm glad I exerted my co-design influence on telling her she had to do that. Judith, you're up next if you want to share a reflection.
I'll let Judith speak first, and then because she hasn't done her reflection.
Okay, so then there's what you want to discuss in the appointment, and once again, all fields are optional. So if it's not relevant to a particular appointment, you just skip it over. I wouldn't have time to enter my medical history here because it would take a very long time. But you can also, so you can pick which things that you're worried about, current symptoms, and don't actually have a mouse and I'm having trouble with this keypad. Things like what medications you're on, including vitamins and things that can also interact, allergies, lifestyle factors, mental health, vaccinations, screening tests, whether you're experiencing any pain, weight issues, digestive issues, reproductive health, travel, and so on. Then you can also go through medications, but it doesn't just ask for a list of medications, it's looking at the impact on your life, managing symptoms, the side effects, withdrawal effects, whether you're wanting to adjust the dose, interactions, and also the long-term effects that sometimes you put on this stuff and it's a bit of set and forget. So monitoring and whether there's any other options available.
And when we've almost finished now going through the sheet, but one of the things that we did notice is when we did a full literature review of what was there out there, we discovered that there wasn't that much that really we were a bit surprised that there wasn't anything out there like this that was really tuned to the consumer. Plenty of things for doctors to tick and flick, but not very much for people with lived experience of mental ill health. So we think this is a great resource that will really help people be able to better engage with their physical health, and also just be able to keep a bit of a record, and try to also hold some of the physical health GPs to account to issues that are important to us.
Yeah, wonderful. And, these categories that Judith and Mel are going through now, these were all categories that the co-design group told us we should have. So I think that I put the ICD-10 to them as an initial suggestion, and they were like, no, that's not specific enough. I mean, it's not that useful for, real human beings, but sometimes it helps to start with a suggestion. And so every suggestion that you were seeing on the screen is something that the co-design group said were important to them in their lived experience. So I think that's one of the real strengths of this, is that consumers told us what they needed from this. And, things like quite late in the piece, someone said there isn't enough on medication. It needs its own whole section, because when I go to the doctor, that's the only thing I want to talk about, and I'm not comfortable with it buried in there. And everyone was like, yeah, that's, we agree with that. And without that voice, I wouldn't have done it. I would have just been like, okay, without someone telling me, I wouldn't have known. So I think that's been the real strength of it. You look like you have something to say, Judith.
Did you want me to go to the next bit? Or?
Yeah, please.
So then there's also some resources out there around questions to ask your doctor. But for me, what I actually find is I go to the appointment, and then it's actually afterwards that I have a lot of the, oh God, why didn't I ask that? What did he say about this? What's happening here? What do I do next? So some of this is aimed at looking at some of that space as well. So there's steps after the appointment, and you can sort of add this to your plan. And you can also, so you can choose whether or not you have this section or not. So if you're sharing it with the doctor, you might choose not to, but if it's for you personally. So there's sort of suggestions around making sure you get your scripts filled, asking for clarification, scheduling any follow-up appointments, letting your doctor know if you're having side effects, and thinking about whether you need second opinions and so on. And then there's what I like to call the if everything goes to shit section, but is actually on here called navigating a bad experience.
The researchers did use their influence to eliminate swear words from the resource.
Oops, sorry. Anyway,
But it's easily understood.
Oh, yeah. And when I say I don't include myself in the researchers that eliminated the swear words.
So, it's just thinking about why a consultation may not have gone how you wanted it to. So things like reflecting on your concerns, seeking a second opinion, communicating with your doctor, requesting a care plan review, involving a patient advocate, seeking emotional support, and so on. So just things that people can think about. There's also some links that you can go through just around. So we decided early on, because there's a lot of stuff in this space, so we kind of decided we had to be quite specific in our scope. So we're not providing specific health and advocacy information, but there's links to organisations that do. And just a really good one, if you're not aware of it, is Health Direct, that also has a really good symptom checker. But so there's different ones for different states as well as national, and you can also choose whether or not you want to add the ones for your state and national, to your plan. You can go yes, I want to add the Victorian ones. Next. There's also the option to include a little memorandum of understanding. So this was a little bit controversial. Some people liked it and some people didn't, but once again, it's entirely optional. That, if I can find the page, no, it's just an agreement that you can get your doctor to sign to say that they've read it. So you can click on that if you want it. Next, and then you just go generate PDF. And this is where you hope like hell that it works. And then you go download PDF. Open. Okay. So that's just the front page. If I go here, and then it's got about me, and it's got my health needs, and it's got in my appointment, and it's got after my appointment, some helpful links. And yeah, that's the memorandum of understanding with the doctor. And as I say, it can be as brief or as detailed as you like. So if you want to list out previous surgeries, all the medications you've tried, all of that, you can go into a lot of detail. If you just want to be, these are the questions I want to ask, it's a 15-minute appointment and I want to be in and out, you can use it that way too. Where personally I think it would also be very, very useful, I've had a lot of occasions of going to doctor's appointments with NDIS workers, and sometimes they'll wait in the waiting room, sometimes they'll come in with me. I'm not always particularly good at asking or knowing what I need from them. And I think this would be a really good resource where you could sit down before the appointment with your support worker and go through and be, this is what I'm wanting from the appointment, this is what I want to tell the doctor, and it would help the support worker to understand what I was trying to do so they can help me advocate for myself.
And with that, I'd like to declare the consumer resource launched. I'd like to again thank the co-design group who really made all of the decisions that weren't related to the budget. That's an on.
Time out a bit, didn't we? Just a little.
Yep. But I think, I think we couldn't have done this without them. And I think that, I say that about, each of them personally have been an absolute pleasure to work with, but also because, as a collective, consumers bring knowledge that researchers and clinicians just don't have. And I think that is one of the real strengths of this project. So thank you so much. Thank you again, Co-Design Group. And we'll be around to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Right. Just a bit of a thank you for our wonderful team who have worked really hard on the consumer resource for the last almost 2 years. Just a bit of a token thank you for each of your amazing efforts. Sorry, I'm balancing. Whoops. Right. Oh, they're actually not named. Oh. Ha ha ha. Offence. Mel, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Dave, thank you.
Just a whole bag of the free Mentos.
And tea bag.
Judith, thank you so much.
Thank
Mike, thank you very much. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
And can I just say a special thank you to Tessa, because if you add Elsa and Heidi to this group, we're actually quite a opinionated lot of people, and she's done an incredible job of doing reasonably authentic co-design, at least in terms of the sharing of power, and I think she's, done a really, really good job.
Thank you so very much. I know that I'll be trying to use the consumer resource myself in preparing for my next specialist appointment. All right, we actually are running a little bit ahead of time, but we will continue to move on. Russell Roberts is up next to talk about the latest sort of update in the national data linkage on premature mortality, and also to discuss a bit on where to from here. Russell is with Charles Sturt University and is the National Director of Equally Well Australia. Welcome, Russell Roberts.
What a potential moment in Australian mental health history that we've got here. It's a great example. Here we are. Whether it is a moment in Australian mental health history is up to us and what happens over the next few days. But an awesome start. Thank you to Chris and Tessa for that piece of work. gold standard co-design. And thank you for the Australian Department of Health and Ageing for supporting it with, as Chris said, a one line: develop up a consumer resource to equalise the power inequities. That's fantastic. And also thank you, as it disappeared, to our sponsors who recognise the value of this. The department funds this meeting so that it's a free conference, and conferences and forums like this are not inexpensive. Also, all those lists of supporters of the commissions who have given bursaries to enable people who are not supported by their organisation or not working with an organisation to attend and have all their costs covered. Thank you to them. And if you're a recipient of that bursary, if you get a chance, it would be nice to say thanks and give them some feedback about, the value of this, if it proves to be valuable. It's a big commitment. Some people have to sort of go out on a limb to, sponsor this money. So I really encourage, one, I would like to honour it, but two, I'd encourage you to honour this commitment by the government's commissions. It shows, I think, that the potential value and the voice that Equally Well has with these organisations. The other thing, and before we move on to my little bit, the other thing I'd like to say is the next step for that consumer resource, because it is about equalising some of those power inequities. The work we did with Lived Experience Australia a year or two ago showed that only 20% of mental health workers ask people about their physical health condition. 20%, shame on us. 50%, if someone raises a complaint or a concern about their physical health or medication, they don't take them seriously. Really? It's unacceptable. The resource is about changing that power dynamic so that you go with some power. That there's so much the doctor, the clinician, and the patient. We've got to change that dynamic. They're here to serve us, and that's what we're trying to do. The next step of this is to get this endorsed by the governments and the professional organisations. We've had initial conversations with them saying, this is what we're doing, and we're going to come back to you so that when you go to your GP or your psychologist, Jenny, or your exercise physiologist, Simon, or the psychiatrist, John, then they, where's this come from? And you can go and say, it's endorsed by your college, as an important resource. Because of the power dynamic, you come with something, often they'll dismiss it, just like they dismiss our physical health concerns. They'll dismiss whatever, you've got this from Professor Google. Where's that come from? So this is why the next step, it's really important to get places like the College of GPs to have their sign and their logo on it. Interesting for me, it's going to be an interesting chat. We've had this conversation with them. I said, yeah, we're up for that conversation. We've flipped the consultation stuff here. Normally, like, the professions do all of this, and at the very last moment they go back to the consumers and say, what do you reckon? Oh, yeah, it's nice. It was all right, I suppose. We've flipped it. We've had this proper gold standard co-design, which then we're going back to the organisation saying, now we've done it, what do you reckon about this? Be interesting how they respond. They'll say, why haven't I been involved from the start? Just like we've been saying for 10 years. So it's going to be an interesting process. At the moment, good faith. All with good faith to say, yes, we're keen to engage in this. I hope from the College of GPs and the Australian Societies for Lifestyle Medicine that we'll get these things, because it will be, I think, useful. Won't it be good for people to be ready to have therapeutic conversations? And that's what they're here for. And that's why clinicians work. They don't want to be bad people. They want to help. And, it warmed my heart to see the collective, the co-design here, because that's what collective impact's about as well. The people with lived experience, the clinicians, the researchers, the policy makers, we all want the same thing, and we want to work together. And really, hopefully, today is a significant day in the history of mental health, because we will work together to take this a few more steps. Now, so once again, can we just thank the folks from Tessa, Chris, and the team? Now, I just need some help from the IT person to find out where my presentation is and how I progress through that. Here we go. And I need to press it at that. Awesome. We've, a little bit like the consumer resource, we've spent 2 years, another one line in the Australian government to sort of link national data to try and start to track our progress at reducing the premature mortality of people living with mental illness.